Golden rule is if I could copy paste a headline onto a competitor's page, it's a bad headline.
Real quick here on the testimonials, you mentioned before that it's good to focus on one as opposed to multiple quotes. Is that right? Can you tell us why?
And I'll take you through how we can create these icons using ChatGPT's image generation.
All right, get your roasting skills ready, Alex.
So problem, then solution. We try and keep that as high level and accessible and digestible as possible. They've actually tried testing ticks against custom emojis. Ticks actually convert better than custom emojis.
Before you even jump into writing any copy, can you take us through your process?
Too many people are writing as if no one's comparing their product to someone else's product. You have to bear in mind they're comparing you to 5 or 10 products.
I guess this is what they call vibe designing.
Yeah.
Hey guys, in this video I create a website live with Alex Napier Holland, a conversion copywriter with over 14 years experience who has worked with some of the world's largest brands like Adobe, Red Bull, and Salesforce. Together we create a landing page for a SaaS company, and Alex starts the process by taking us through a document that guides the strategy for the copywriting and that can teach you how to turn words into millions of dollars. Now, at the end of the process, I take the copy and I create a design that we publish into Webflow. So you'll be able to see the end-to-end experience of building a website with great copy. Enjoy the show, and I hope you learn a lot.
To begin with, what we're going to do is we're just going to create or generate a website just out of the box with Relume, and we'll see what that looks like, and then we'll roast it, and then we'll sort of approach it from how Alex would approach it with AI still, but from a copywriter's perspective. So yeah, that's the plan for today. Yeah, so it's basically what I've done. I've just dumped all the information from this page into the sitemap prompt. Sitemap prompt is basically covering the entire website, all the information across all the pages that references the sitemap prompt. So it's just a good place to add all the information about the company. So we're generating the sitemap here, and we're only going to be using we're only going to be focusing on the homepage for now. So it's just the landing page, homepage for now.
Nice.
And we'll jump into the wireframe, see what Relume cooks up.
I mean, I'd say one of the most important things, we're looking at a homepage here.
Yep.
People use the expression homepage, landing page, and sales page interchangeably. Yep. And I'm as guilty of doing that as anybody. I call myself a landing page copywriter. I actually hardly write landing pages. A real landing page is one of those capture pages where you just have an email capture form.
Okay.
But the entire industry's decided that we call everything landing pages, so I kind of roll with it. What we typically deal with are two things: sales pages and home pages. So if I'm running Google Ads, I want to have adverts pointing to a dedicated sales page that exists purely to convert. The thing people get wrong with home pages is they focus on conversion and sales. When you have a website homepage, people are landing here at a variety of different points in a purchase journey. Some of them are ready to buy, and they need to be able to do that. But a lot of people have just discovered your brand for the first time, and we don't want to sell hard. The point of a homepage is to explain the product, explain why you exist, explain the purpose of your business and your product, and walk people through a typical user experience. If they're ready to buy, they're ready to buy. If they're not, they're not. We're not pushing hard for a sale on a homepage.
Do you have anything to show on your screen to illustrate that at all? Or
yeah, I do actually. If you give me 2 seconds. Okay. Yeah, I have just 2 seconds.
Real high level here.
Yep, I've got this is for cold.email. This is a website I recently developed in conjunction with a website design agency based in Toronto.
Okay.
So we have here at the top. Yep. Great design teams in Toronto. So I'm not going to get too into the weeds here, but the issue a cold email agency has is they're competing in a hyper competitive market. And you cannot just tell people what your product does. We all get spammed heavily with cold email agencies. These guys are genuinely fantastic at what they do. We had to find a way to make that stand out. So we just tell people your cold email sucks. hire our experts to build a system. And what I did was in the very top, in the explainer section, I poke fun at the rest of the way the industry works. Most people use Apollo. I say we find customers that will never appear in Apollo. So the idea is if anybody's got any sense of how cold email works, they instantly have a sense of, oh shit, what am I doing wrong? I'm using Apollo. There's a better way of doing it. You can see here we jump straight in with social proof above the fold. And then we go straight into pain points. Does this sound like your last cold email campaign? Generic leads, lazy personalization tactics, and clueless agencies that sell laundry lists of marketing services. I'd say look at this start with a pain point section essentially. Any homepage project, I always start with the pain points. If you nail the pain points, the rest of the website's easy. If you screw the pain points up, it will be very hard. So I would look to this section for inspiration.
All right, focus on the pain points.
So basically what we have here is, I mean, it's a features section. It's just going straight into what are the features. And then we have how it works. What are your thoughts on like explaining how it works? Like, is that something that you would typically do, and like in what scenario?
Absolutely. I always walk people through the product use. Typically I do it sequentially, so I'll pick 3 to 5 steps. The first one might be how quick and easy it is to get started. Then I might have feature cluster A, feature cluster B, and then I'll wrap up with tactical benefits. So this is what you'll get out of a product over 3 to 6 months, and strategic benefits, this is what you might get over 2 to 3 years. So how easy it is to get started, the core use cases, and then show them how it's going to help them to grow their business faster, how to help them maybe have a nicer quality of life. So you're painting a picture of a future for them.
Got it. Awesome. All right, so I think for this is like, we can compare this. This is what the AI has generated. At the end, we can circle back and compare the two. But we do have a file which was inspired by Alex's. Alex has a Figma kit, and he has a bunch of templates that he uses. And these templates are basically play into some of his principles and frameworks around copy. So we've prepped a template here, which people watching, you guys can reference and use in your own projects. And this is what we're going to use to be sort of the base of the wireframe. But I guess we could take a step back, Alex. Like, before you even jump into like writing any copy, can you take us through like your process, and like before, like the marketing strategy doc that we were sharing, the messaging strategy doc, sorry. I'm keen to learn more about that, and for you to, sort of explain your process before you even jump into a Figma or into writing any copy at all.
Yeah, I like to use a simple analogy, a family-friendly one. We are cooking food. 3 steps. We want great ingredients, we want a great cooking process, and we want to have nice presentation. Now, the AI copywriting startup industry is working backwards. They started off doing presentation. Presentation is what kind of words should we use, what kind of language should we use. Let's use active tense language, let's use impactful verbs. That's fun, but that's very surface level. At present, most of the AI copywriting startups are at the middle stage of cookery. Let's use frameworks. For example, a framework could be the product that delivers this benefit for this audience. This is a good place to be at. This is intelligent. What almost nobody is doing in the AI startup copywriting scene is thinking about the ingredients. And when I'm turning up to cook, I want really good ingredients. And those ingredients are customer intelligence, things I know about my customers. Now, this is a model from Jennifer Havis from her book, Finding the Right Message, that most copywriters I know reference. So typically I either interview 10 or 15 customers, or maybe survey several hundred. And we're looking for the struggle. So the pain points they're experiencing that led us to try our product. And these help us to write the pain point section. We then have solutions. So checking in with them on what kind of use case, what kind of job do you expect the product to do, you'd be surprised how often startups find out that people are using their product for slightly different purposes than what they intended. The next is hesitations. So what kind of worries they might have felt before actually using the product. If we know they were worried about the cost or worried that it was technical, if it would be too hard to migrate, then we can actually mitigate those in advance, and we can reassure customers throughout the process they don't need to have to worry about these things. We then have awareness levels. So what kind of awareness do they have of competing solutions in the market? It's really important that we understand what they're comparing us to. And it's worth bearing in mind, we aren't just being compared to other SaaS products. The default for most people is Google Sheets and WhatsApp. A lot of our customers aren't using any product at all, and we have to convince them to pay for one in the first place. We then have differentiators. So differentiators is the reasons that our customers chose us over the competition. Now, this is an absolute gift in terms of angles we can pick. This helps us to choose angles for our headlines, for our copy. And finally, success. So what does life look and feel like? So we're inviting both business outcomes, but also emotions and feelings, even for a B2B product that we've been given. One of my favorite examples, I work with a North American real estate SaaS app, and they replaced 5 or 6 badly stitched together apps, one mobile app. And we spoke to their reps, and they said, instead of having to work all weekend and upsetting their partner, they're able to finish work early on a Friday, go home and take the kids camping. So we could say, get your weekends back. So
Nice.
Getting these sort of emotional, touchy-feely benefits out of a dry business app. No one cares about ROI. People care about their families. People care about their health. If you can connect a business app to making someone's life better, to helping them to get to their kid's birthday party, that blows any kind of business benefit out of the water.
Yeah,
Sounds
awesome.
good.
Hey, Alex, how do you approach the questions when you're interviewing these customers? Are you literally asking them the questions in the messaging strategy doc?
Yeah, so the way I frame it, if I speak to my client and I say, can we speak to your customers? If we speak to the customers and say, we want to make a kick-ass website to help us make lots of money, obviously nobody's going to help. What we do instead, and this is honest, is we frame it as a product feedback exercise. I honestly get great results without offering anybody free Amazon vouchers or anything like that. We just say, hey, you're using our product. We'd love to speak to you and get your feedback. Your feedback will help us to shape the future of our product. Most people are stoked. They're paying to use your product. They're paying $50, $100 a month plus. They love to give their feedback.
That's awesome. And do you have like a script you go in with where it has like all the questions that you'd ask that align to this?
Just V6. I just use the same ones each time. Just that are written underneath these headings here.
So these
and
ones.
then I've got various ways of dicing it up. What I often do is ask, and this works particularly well for surveys when I've got a few hundred responses. Can you rank the top themes? So I can see here for our project right here, the top themes are cognitive overload, fragmented systems, rigid plans that collapse under pressure, and so on for each of these different sections. And I then do the same thing and I ask ChatGPT to rank the keywords. So some of our keywords we've got here, we've not got a lot of volume. We've only got 10 interviews. You can imagine these numbers would be bigger if we had more interviews. Burning out, that's a nice impactful expression I could grab there. Energy. There's a few generic words here, but I tend to filter out the more emotional, impactful ones that are there.
So based on the interview, you draw those words and then organize into these categories here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm using my own imagination as well, but I'll skim through this and pick out words that stand out as well.
I love
I'm
that.
sure
That's such a methodical way of speaking their language because it's coming from them. Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. All right, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but I think next what we're going to do, now we have that messaging strategy doc, that's going to be like our source of truth. Now we can also look at this template that Alex has put together on like the most ideal flow of information. So maybe we can start there and then go into each section, and we'll use that doc and the words in that doc and write copy. So I can run through, actually, Alex, maybe you can run through the wireframe just at a high level, and then we can start digging into each section.
Real high level.
Yes, high level. Yep, we have a hero section here, headline explainer, CTA buttons. We then drop in our logos here as well. Don't use big brands like Apple and Microsoft because no one takes you seriously. Use smaller brands that are more realistic. Use a customer quote above a fold that should be very accessible and high level. Further down, we can use more technical customer quotes. This should be a very impactful, emotional one.
Now,
3 industry problems.
Real quick here on the testimonials. You mentioned before that it's good to focus on one as opposed to multiple quotes. Is that right? Can you tell us why?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of customer wall of love. It's a real waste of customer testimonials because it requires a ton of cognitive load to sift through them and find a customer testimonial that's relevant to you. What I tend to do is drop them through the page one at a time. And my favorite sequence is I make a bold claim in a headline and back it up with a quote. If I tell you that I'm going to deliver 40x more sales, I want to have a quote underneath from a customer saying we got 40x more sales.
Cool.
It's always just back and forth. Awesome. Make a claim, back it up.
Yeah, so for me, like some of the considerations from a design perspective, well, I make this feel like it's going to be related because the pattern that Alex has established here is we'll have like feature B, talk about feature B, and then we'll have a testimonial that backs it up. So, you know, part of, I think color is going to play a part and also layout as well. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking as a designer. If that's important, we want to make those sections feel related to each other. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, this is where we have the problems. So the pain points.
So 3 problems, 3 particular pain points. What I tend to do, if you remember, I said earlier that we tend to have two clusters: people who are using a competitor's product and we want to poach them. And we have people who are not paying for any product, and we want to convince them to get their wallets out and start paying for one. So my first problem is usually talking to people who don't use a product at all, i.e. you need a time management app. And problems 2 and 3, I typically dedicate to you're using a time management app and it sucks, and this is what it looks and feels like. So I cover in those 3 problems that spectrum of people from low solution awareness to high solution awareness. And when I summarize the industry problem here, I always like to visualize when I'm writing that my customer or my prospect, has 10 tabs open for competing products, and I have to get them to close those other tabs. Too many people are writing, particularly in hyper competitive spaces, as if no one's comparing their product to someone else's product. You have to bear in mind they're comparing you to 5 or 10 products. And the pain point section is a great way to throw shade of the rest of, tell them what sucks about those products so they just close those tabs. Even if they whittle it down to 3 instead of 10, you're getting much closer to a sale then. I've had 3 startups in the same week reach out to me with an AI sales chatbot. Every single one of their websites was written as if they were the first AI sales chatbot to ever exist. You have to always visualize this competitive element you're trying to stand out.
Yeah, awesome.
So problem, then solution. We try and keep that as high level and as accessible and digestible as possible. Then walk them through, I'd say probably 3 to 5 steps. Onboarding, feature cluster feature cluster A, feature cluster B, then a midway call to action. And then after that, typically we'll look at if the first part of a website is trying to convert business users who are interested in a product and fairly optimistic and enthusiastic, they haven't hit the call to action. That's usually because they've got some kind of worries or concerns. So the second part of the page is where I deal with more cynical, unsure, technical buyers. And I'll deal with sort of more technical questions here, like, have you got specific worries about a particular integration? or in this case, we might funnel them through to a dedicated sales page for their exact industry, where we can get into more detail about how our product helps engineers or how our product helps agencies. So there's various different sections I use here, but if we go back to our risk mitigation,
What are your thoughts on like a frequently asked questions section where you can like just address a bunch of questions?
Yeah, so somebody asked early on about SEO, and that's a great question. There's a couple of answers there. FAQs are great for SEO. So what I don't do and what I respond very poorly to is if an SEO consultant asks me to try and shove keywords into headlines, I don't do that, and I will never compromise the conversion journey for SEO. The two things I do are FAQs are wicked because you can go and shamelessly put long tail SEO key phrases as clumsy and as shamelessly as you like down in the FAQs folded into accordions, and you could put in 1,000 or 1,500 words of relevant rank copy. I don't write that. That's for a content writer, not a conversion copywriter. FAQs are also great if you have a specific question that, let's say, 5 to 10% of your customers who are really technical care about. And if you put that technical content in the main homepage, you'll bore most people to sleep. But engineers care about it, put it down in the FAQ, and technical people will go and look for it. But you don't water down and dilute that narrative. The other quick SEO tip I wanted to share, and I love this one, is we have what we call kickers. Some people call them eyebrows. The small piece of text above a headline. I love these. They are so useful. If I go and use a kicker or an eyebrow to name the section, say integrations, that frees me up to write a headline about the value that the integrations add without having to necessarily use the word integrations again. You could have features in it. You could have whatever you want to put in it. And when I'm in the hero section, I will always name the product in plain, simple English, nothing fancy in the hero section. What you can also do, because people forget that your style classes and your SEO classes should be detached. So you could have a kicker set to an H1 SEO class or an H2. So if you say, for example, want to have a particular keyword, put the SEO keyword into the kicker, set it to an H2, and then you can have a headline as plain text but big underneath, or an H2 as well, depending on how you want to do it.
Okay.
Awesome. That's cool. We'll get into that probably once we get it into Webflow. We can start to look at like some of the SEO little tips and tricks. One last thing. So we have something I find really interesting. We have the CTA section, but then obviously if they haven't clicked that, they have doubts. And so I like this distinction you've made of like grouping some things that like handle those doubts and answer more questions. That's really clear to me. Would you do like a CTA sandwich? I've never done multiple CTAs on a homepage, but would you do like a bit of a sandwich so that maybe the doubts have been answered here and then it's time to action? Alternatively, I think as a designer, I would probably just make sure that this CTA up the top is like floating and always in view, so that once they have answered those doubts, they can action on it. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Floating nav bar is, and I've worked with several high-level conversion rate optimization specialists. A floating nav bar is a really good tactic. I would highly recommend doing that. What you can also do as well is you could get in 2 or 3 social proof points in the nav bar too. A couple of like really big wins you might have had, you can get those into the nav bar. And to answer your previous question, I tend to mix up the CTAs. My midway CTA, I tend to write more for a low-tech business user. My final CTA, which is after the technical objections section, I tend to try and make that a little bit more technical. It's just good to come in at different angles, mix up. I have the same CTA each time, but the headline's different.
Yeah. Would you change the design, like if you want it to feel different as well? Or,
no, I'm a big fan, and I'm slightly overstepping my mark as a copywriter here. I feel like you should play around with angles. Yeah, but I feel like when it comes to like the button text and the button design, I feel like it should be consistent. Like we're asking them to do the same thing repeatedly, but with a different headline each time, but the same button is my take.
Okay, can I kind of confirm something here? in terms of the approach of the overall wireframe structure or the content. It seems like a landing page is like a conversation. This is how I usually design my landing page. It's conversational UI, as in you're answering, what do you do? Who are you? Why should I believe you? And so how do I do it? And so right away, this is kind of like the product. Okay, this is the what. And then you go down, it's like, and it seems like the social proof and the who you're associated with is kind of sprinkled throughout. So the answer is the who. And then this answers more of the what, like what are the problems? And then, okay, what abilities am I getting with your service or your product? Okay, so that answers more of the what. And then eventually we start going to the how, on like talking about the features and the abilities. And then eventually it's like, okay, I'm sold. Then the CTA is kind of like, well, are you convinced? And then if I have objections, then I kind of, I have further points to like further win me. And then followed by more FAQs and maybe some social proofs, and then have another call to action at the end. So it seems like a conversation. Yeah, is that how you kind of approach it?
Yeah, just to be slightly nitpicky, like for homepage specifically, for a homepage, absolutely, it's like respectfully guiding someone around a car, showing them how the car works, showing them more features, but not going for a hard sell. Whereas if I'm hard to do a sales page, you ramp up the gear slightly. If you're pointing a specific advert on Facebook ads or Google ads to a specific sales page, I'm a little bit more aggressive then. The other thing as well is it comes down to the audience. And for SaaS is not an industry where people respond well to being hard sold. You can look at some fitness products where that works better. I personally don't like that game. That's why I don't do it. I work in SaaS because it's a more respectful pitch generally. You don't want to hard sell.
Sweet.
So it's really good to understand who your audience is and how they respond to pitches. Yeah, that's great.
Massively, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, lucky we have a SaaS in front of us. So next steps is I'm going to get the AI. So basically what I've done here is I've taken the principles from Alex, created this template, but I've also added a bit of a copywriting, a bit of a prompt here that's going to help guide the copywriting. And so I can generate the copy, and then from there we're going to get it to a point that it is better. So this is kind of like AI is going to sort of get you to a point, but this is going to start to show, okay, how can we take this to another level? How can we improve what AI has suggested here? So this is the part I'm keen on, getting into the weeds on now. Alex, kind of like talk me through, feel free to jump in and like edit the copy as well. Talk me through, like, looking at this right now, how could we make it better based on the words it's using and the overall messaging.
We've got a couple of different routes we can go down. So the first one is to simply define what transform looks like. The second one is to just point to a specific audience. So we've established that Time Hero is built for solopreneurs. It's flexible, it's not rigid and robotic, and it adapts to people's life. So we could say something like the time management app for solopreneurs. We could then say the time management app We could potentially add a kicker at the top that adds solopreneurs there. We could say, for example, we've been given the pain point here as well. Adapts when your work schedule changes.
Nice.
Now, at what point do you feel like it's too wordy or maybe too short?
Right. So right now, I'm trying to slim this down. So typically what happens is I write a wordy headline and then I cut it down and replace longer words with shorter words. Time management app that adapts. when your day falls apart, for example. We could point to a particular problem they might have there.
You could even do the app. Or, like, do you think time management is key here?
Yeah, potentially. Manage your solo business, even when things fall apart, even when your day falls apart.
So, Alex, when you're working on projects, how often do you A/B test? How often are you running like different versions of a landing page or a home page?
So that's down to my client. In an ideal world, we do that quite heavily. There are the amount of SaaS companies that honestly test as much as they should is quite small. But yeah, I've got clients that hire me. We do ongoing optimization. I would say that's a minority of cases, sadly. Most people treat copywriting as a transaction and move on quickly, but there's a small number that do a really good job of testing, and it's really worth it. They really get the benefits from doing that. But unfortunately, a lot of people still treat it as more of a transaction.
Got it.
So
now I definitely had the similar experience. It kind of baffles me. It's something that at Relume, like, we're sort of exploring, like, why don't more people do it? What if that was easy to do? That would be amazing, because then we can like put all this thinking to an objective test and see which actually converts more. Yeah.
So often I come up
actually,
with even just pointing to the audience can help a lot as well. Just describing the specific audience you serve is one way of standing out, but it's quite easy.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Just going back to
in
some of my
terms of
quotes
the supporting
here as well.
copy, what do you tend to put in this supporting copy, and like what's the relationship between the headline and the supporting copy?
Typically to flesh it out with more details, we can include a couple of the technical details, a couple of the features. So one of the frameworks I like to talk about is features, abilities, and benefits. People talk about features and benefits. Abilities is more important. So what's the ability that our product gives people? And I typically focus on the ability in the headline, and then I will focus on the features and benefits more in the section underneath.
Got it.
So I would say something like stay on top of your schedule, even when your day falls apart.
So you're kind of addressing the pain points a little bit as well. Now, Peter is saying here, in my process, I include for who. And so I wonder in the heading, should we address?
So what I typically do is get that into the kicker as well and the explainer. So I might get that into the kicker. I sometimes get into the headline.
Yeah.
In this case, I've chosen to focus slightly more on a pain point.
Got it.
So you could say Time Hero AI is a personal productivity assistant. I've got it down here actually.
Yeah. When you
You
say
gotta add
kicker,
that
you
kicker
mean
to the component.
eyebrow, right? Is that what?
Yeah,
the
same thing.
Got it. Yeah. Now let's talk about the interaction between, so the coordination between you as the designer and Alex as the copywriter. Do you wait for his headline first, or like, how's that relationship work? Do you say, hey, look,
I'd be
I have a
curious to hear
visual
what
of
Alex
this.
thinks.
Yeah. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah. Well,
What was the question, sir? I was just deep into the copy there regarding.
He was in the zone. In terms of balancing the title, the copywriting, and the messaging with the visuals and the design. Because obviously we got an image placeholder here below. And Adam, if you want to share your screen, we have a beautiful showcase of like this calendar SaaS app. So what's your process? Do you come up with the headline first and then have the image support that, or is it the other way around?
It's funny actually, because we've come from different angles. I'm a copywriter, you're a designer, but actually the way that these wireframes look is exactly how I work. My own Figma pack copy base is very similar to this in terms of appearance. I have the copy. I show people this is where an image might go. So I use Google Glyphs, and I'll just put in like a rough picture of a credit card I'll put in a rough picture of a calendar just to hint at what the design might be and nothing more than that. And then the designer can take care of that afterwards. I don't think you should get too into the design. I like to use the expression content architecture. I create content architecture and then hand that to designer.
That's the purpose of the wireframe view in Relume. We've spoken about like we're going to be extending this and have the design view where you're looking at like the visuals. But the purpose of the wireframe view is to just think about the content architecture. And I've found that you get the best results when you've done the copy. In reality though, that doesn't always happen because you don't have the luxury of working with a copywriter. So you're relying on the client to come back with copy, and that takes time and you want to move ahead. And so in an ideal world, I would let Alex write the copy and then be informed by what Alex writes. But there is a zigzag, but that's typically, that would typically be like the in my opinion, the best approach.
Right. So right now he's in the problem section, and then he's working on a headline.
Awesome. So the first one here, you struggle to manage your...
Talk us through this.
So the first one here, you struggle to manage your work schedule. So that pain point is written for somebody with a super low level of product awareness. They don't even use a time management app. The second one, I've thrown shade at Sansama. Sansama forces you to schedule ahead. Motion was built for bigger teams. I can then flesh out what that looks like in the copy underneath that. And then the macro pain point is you need a work schedule that was designed for solopreneurs. That talks to all of the people across the spectrum underneath. And I only need people to identify one of these three sub pain points for this macro pain point to hit home. And yes, we can and we will slag off other people's products.
I was going to say, that's savage, man. I love it.
I mean, as long as you're kind of objective, we're not lying.
Yeah, the good thing about this is that Alex can work on some copy. Now I can switch over to the style guide builder and start showing some design, and then we can return back to the copy, and Alex can talk through that. I think that's probably the best way to move forward.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start looking at. I'm just going to make this the home page. So this is what I see
again, guys,
in
this is a great way to collaborate with team members while the copywriter is working and doing his thing. Within Relume, we got the designer in the style guide builder hashing out the styles, and so they're working concurrently, and it speeds up the workflow. And you could hop on a Zoom call and collaborate and go back and forth, and so it just shortens the time to produce this amazing website that generates leads.
Okay, well, I've kind of gone against what Alex has advised. I've got the biggest companies in the world.
Hey, you know what? So I wonder if you can use ChatGPT to generate some local... Yeah, there you go. There's a local brand.
So I just want to clarify, I think you can get in a few of the big brands as long as there's a mix. If people just have that same copy-paste Microsoft Apple, it looks a bit cheesy. But if you've got some cool, interesting brands mixed in, then it looks credible.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so for these images, you'll struggle to manage. This is where I'm going to jump into the OpenAI image generation. So nice. Let me jump into that and get my prompt. All right, so I've prepped a prompt. Basically, I'll walk through the prompt at a high level. So here's the prompt. Basically, getting it to design an icon that looks like these icons. So I have these icons ready to go. And this actually started by finding an icon. These icons were generated with AI, but I found an icon, I think it was on this website that I liked the look of. It was nice. This icon that I started with. And then I sort of worked backwards. I told AI, can you describe this icon in words? And then based off that, create a new icon for to describe like a checklist, to describe a clock, etc. So that's what this part of the prompt is doing, and also this above part as well. And then this part is just going to help me create, basically suggest what icon should be used for the copy. And then the second part is based off that, generate the icon. So I'm going to submit this. So this prompt's going to get me going in the right direction.
Right. Now scroll up a bit,
then,
guys. You guys can pause the video and just take a look at that prompt. That's where the gold is.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go here and I'm just going to copy the copy here.
Okay.
And then I'm going to paste that in. And so now AI should tell me like, okay, calendar with alert. All right, it's generating now.
That is great.
Hopefully this will be built into Relume soon.
Can you scroll up again and show that prompt in the full height? There you go. There you go. Take a snapshot,
so
guys.
Explaining.
This is where it's at. That is such a good prompt. Wow.
All right. I might get it to create a few other versions.
Okay. Let's switch over to Alex here. Where is he at? He's in the feature section.
Yeah, we've got solution down. I'm fairly happy with problem and solution. Features is coming along. What I tend to do is I write fairly generic placeholder headlines, and then I sharpen them up and make them more specific. So that's, I often call them placeholder headlines. The first version that goes in is a bit generic, and then you try and tighten them up and pull out and tease out angles that are a bit more unique to that product. Usually by looking at customer feedback. So I'm just, in my other tab, I'm just looking through all of my customer feedback to pull out angles, emotions, feelings, differentiators. That's one of the most important words for people to use is differentiator. The things that make our product stand out against the competition. You can see our two feature headlines at the moment are a bit vague. They don't really smack you in the face. Whereas I feel like the problem and solution sections at the moment are a bit more differentiated.
Okay.
You know,
Very
you can
good.
see why you choose our product over the competition if you're a solopreneur.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you're pulling in those principles you had in that spreadsheet, and then you're incorporating all those elements into the copy of the landing page.
Yeah, I mean, I can sometimes spend 3 or 4 hours on a pain point section. So we're doing everything in about 15 minutes here. So it's not, you know, this is just slapping stuff against a wall for now. But it's, you can kind of get an idea for how it looks.
And so why do you think it takes a couple hours for you to refine the messaging there? Like, what's your thought process? What are you clashing through? What's that process?
Pain points. Pain points section is the hardest and most important thing. I'll spend 3 or 4 hours on that because we have a whole ton of pain points, usually too many to fit in. And whatever I do, I'm going to lose some. And it's how can I get in as many important pain points as possible. Sometimes I'll combine 2 or 3 without minimizing the amount of customers I lose. So it's about getting the hierarchy right, talking to the right pain points. Because if you get that wrong, you're always going to lose some customers, and I want to minimize how many we don't talk to. Okay. And you have to think about the strategy as well. How are we presenting our product? How do those pain points lead us to present the product in a different way? Often what I have is my customers very often have one audience segment that we own and are doing great with, and another 2 audience segments they want to reach out to but don't currently work with. So that's often a balancing act. We need to keep on board these existing customers while trying to talk to these 2 new audiences we think could be lucrative without alienating and losing the older ones. That's a very common startup problem. Probably most of my customers are trying to do that. You own one market, but the other 2 are interesting.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So not only just pain points, but then the specific personas or ICPs. Yeah, you gotta definitely
map them out.
Target the main user persona, but then also a future persona that you want to grow into, like a market that you want to grow into. That's good.
that whole messaging strategy I showed you, I sometimes have several different versions for each of the different audiences. And I've had customers before go and target a whole new audience, build out an entire page for them, and realize that audience was just not lucrative and they have to scrap it. It's a real balancing act. It's very hard.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. All right. Remove background.
Yeah.
All right. Now I can go back to the style guide and start adding all the other images. Yeah, all right, so just gonna add in these last icons. I don't love them, but I think they're good enough for now.
Yeah.
Let's just add that in. Cool.
You guys liking the tunes? Give us a like. Show us some love. All right, so interesting. I like how Alex is just trying out different headings here. And so I feel like you're feeling it out, hey? You're just kind of vibing with the
It's
messaging.
a lot like taking a piece of wood and carving it. So none of these headlines are going to get to a finished state. It's very much, you see a big block, you start carving it down, you can see a rough shape of somebody, and then you start seeing details. To get this super sharpened would take, a day or two, but you can already see we've gone from a very basic headline to headlines that is starting to look a little bit more, they make sense. There's a bit more of a narrative emerging. What I want to do, if I had more time, is to carve each of these out and make them really unique to this product, to get more feelings, to get more emotions. One of the most important tips for copywriting, probably the most, is people skim read. So you have to write your pages. Imagine you take away all of the paragraph copy, your headlines alone should tell a complete narrative. That alone will change your copywriting. People should be able to skim down the page, just read the headlines, they've got a complete sales pitch. They don't need to read anything else. But you see people do things like have generic headlines like check out our features or about us. You should never write a headline that says about us. Your kicker might say about us, but if your about us section explains the values that define your company, build those values into the headline. The headlines should be really unique to your company. They should tell a clear narrative, and reading the paragraph copy, that's just optional. You don't have to do it.
Okay, can you zoom in on the kicker and tell me again more thought process behind this? So it seems like, the kicker can
Which
be,
one?
let's say even here, the problem. Like, is that okay as a kicker, or even the solution? Is that like an overall high level description of this section? Again, tell me your thought process of how to best use this eyebrow or kicker text.
So I actually like to play around and have unique kickers, and I will sometimes summarize the problem in 2 to 3 words, but you can absolutely have a problem and the solution as kickers. There is nothing wrong with that at all. What will happen is people will barely even see that text written there. It just, your eyes just glaze over at it. So you can be creative with kickers, but you can just be super plain and boring and just say the problem, the solution, the features. And it just, what it does is it helps the brain make sense of a headline even faster. As if you know that it's a problem section, your brain can make sense of a headline even more quickly. We're all about reducing cognitive load.
Now on the right side, this right wireframe, can you zoom in? You got simplify, focus. What do you think about that? As that use?
I like that. That works. You just need to be consistent. So what they're doing there is they're using a verb. If you're going to use a verb, stick with a verb. When people start jumping around between verbs and nouns, it confuses people. But if you're just consistent and you say, okay, in each of these sections we're using a verb, that works nicely for me. On its own, focus is a bit of a buzzword, simplify is a bit of a buzzword. But if a headline underneath is more specific, then that works quite nicely.
Okay.
Sweet. So I guess I can start talking about some stuff that I'm doing over here. All right. So I've kind of put together some rough idea on a color palette that works. I've gone for quite a minimal color palette here, just to play into the theme of it's meant to be simple. It's meant to simplify your life. It's meant to be something that makes your day feel effortless. Let's go back to the copy, I guess, as well. I think life gets messy. Let's make sure that this brand doesn't feel messy. And it feels like almost the opposite of that. So that's what I've gone for. In terms of the font, the actual UI uses Inter. So one thing that I've done here is I've liked Inter as a font, as a way to see into the classic, as a way to see what other fonts that are similar to Inter could work like. So I can basically just go through a list of fonts that are similar to Inter until I arrive at something. Another sort of approach that I could do, maybe if I wanted to go a little bit outside of Inter, because I think Inter's quite plain and simple, but something maybe with a little bit more personality, I could use a display font. And sort of just look at some of these display fonts have a little bit more personality, and sort of just like play around with what that could look like as well. I might run with that for now. Cool. All right, in terms of the buttons, I'm gonna go for round, and I might actually use this elevate button just because it sort of fits the vibe of the assets here as well. Sweet. Next up, we can look at the treatment for the cards. I might go for some like a bit rounded to fit the iconography here. I think that looks pretty good. And then in terms of the style of the cards, which there's only one card here. I have a couple of options. I might actually just go with this flat approach. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I guess just going through the color schemes that I could choose, this is where I could vibe design as well. As I said though, I do want to make it minimal, but I'll explain some of the rationale. So basically I've used color here to group the testimonial in the feature section, just because these testimonials should relate to the above. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to actually generate some of these testimonials for us, and just make sure that it's relevant to the copy above. So I'm just going to add that into the prompt. Review titles on its claims of staying on top of your small even when life gets busy. So then I'm just going to generate that. I'm sure we could tweak this, but this is a starting point.
And keep in mind, guys, when you're writing copy, especially in the body text, you don't want a whole paragraph. Do you have principles around that, Alex? And is it like 3 or 4 sentences max, or 1 to 2? Because like you said, people do skim through it, like they read the heading first and then.
Are we talking about the feature section you're looking at just there, yeah?
Just body text in general. Is there a general rule? Do you avoid large paragraphs, or is it appropriate to have paragraphs? What's your take on that?
I typically I'll have 1 to 2 short paragraphs. I mean, there's paragraphs and there's paragraphs. The size for the generated and those there are just about right. I typically have 1 of those. But what I would say is that I love feature bullets. So the purpose for paragraphs is the paragraph shouldn't have lots of technical details. The paragraph should tell a nice, easy to read story. And then having those feature bullets means you can shift the technical details into the feature bullets, and they don't bog down the story.
Now, how many sentences in that paragraph story, typically?
Maybe 2.
Two.
Probably two, 2 short ones. I like to keep short, punchy sentences. Nice. And sometimes I might have a very short sentence at the start, and then a slightly longer one. One technique that Apple use that I really like, you'll see they often have, is you'll have particularly for technical products, if you go and look at, say, the page for maybe the Mac Pro or MacBook Pro, and if you spot the copy in the MacBook Pro is very different to the copy in the iPhone because it's a different audience. Try scrolling down if we can find a good example here. They pick out the key benefits in a high contrast color. Here you go. They've done a slightly, you see how they've basically got a massive slab of paragraph of loads of technical copy, but they've highlighted most advanced lineup of chips ever built for a pro laptop in in a higher contrast color.
Yeah.
So a non-technical person can skim read. They can see the non-technical language. And if they're nerdy, they can read the rest of the paragraph. If they're not nerdy, they can keep going. It's all about the visual hierarchy. We've done the same thing here. Gaming feels more immersive and realistic than ever.
Wow.
That's emotional language. It's not technical language. But the technical language is there if you want to read it. So it's this hierarchy there over what you want to engage with. And you can pick and choose. Same thing again here.
Yeah.
So you could just read those white bits and you understand everything that's important, and you're free to then decide if you want to read the rest. Mac Pros are used by creative professionals, whereas an iPhone or an iPad is used by people like your grandparents might use it.
Look at the big text.
See, yeah, completely different pitch, completely different language, way more playful, emotional language, much less technical language. Just look at how simple those words are.
But the contrast again, like you said.
Same technique, but the language is just simpler as well. Much more visual, many more visual aids as well.
Yeah. What are your thoughts around the copy, the typography that we should be using, and how it works with the copy in general? I'm super intrigued by that.
I mean, I'm not a typography expert in that sense. I mean, what I mentioned there in terms of the having tightly wrapped columns. For me, color's one of the ones I'm interested in. Contrast, having that mixture of high and low contrast we discussed as well. Lower contrast colors indicate copy that you may or may not want to read. Higher contrast indicates copy that you should definitely read. It's more benefit focused. And when I'm doing my wireframes, I use grays. I don't use colors, just because the designer can then decide what colors to interpret that with. I'm just establishing hierarchy. But when copywriters are writing, I think copywriters should be thinking about that hierarchy, and you should be using a high contrast and a low contrast. So if you're on a white background, you should be using black or dark gray, and you should be using light gray too, just like Apple are doing here. I wouldn't rip Apple's copy. Apple's headlines are for a hyper mature brand. Everybody knows what an iPhone does. Apple's headlines are way too playful and take total camera control. They can get away with this stuff. You know, Apple's branding for the iPhone 15 was titanium. Apple's branding for the iPhone 16 was Apple Intelligence. If you look at the way that Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone 1 was, it's a widescreen touchscreen iPod. It's a breakthrough internet communications device, and it's a revolutionary mobile phone. It was a really messy pitch. Steve Jobs had to compare it to 3 pre-existing devices, which is an amazing pitch. But the way Apple presents a phone now, just using a couple of playful words, that doesn't work for startups. Too many startups are copying the iPhone 16. They should copy the iPhone 1. But I still think you can learn a lot from how Apple uses typography and color and that mixture of high and low contrast, for sure.
This is quite text heavy.
Nice.
But again, they're not going beyond 3 sentences. They're very meaty sentences, but they're not going more than 3 per paragraph. So that's really, really cool to see.
And the crucial thing is they allow you to skim read, because you've picked out the most important value. The thing that summarizes the value of a whole paragraph is only 7 or 8 words. That's why you can get away with that whole rest of a paragraph, because you don't have to read it.
Yeah, nice. I love that. I'm going to try and apply that in Webflow. Gives me a little bit more control.
All right, we are uploading here into Webflow.
We are.
Walk us through. Okay, there you go. Let's jump in.
Yeah, cool. So it's in Webflow. I can publish the site, but I'm going to actually take some of the advice on board here. So what I would do at this point is just go to the paragraphs, and I might just like change the text color across the paragraphs. I might use a gray here for that. Just gonna make sure that is using normal. Cool. So now we have some distinction between the headings and the supporting copy here. In terms of the tagline though, maybe we can have a distinction there.
An accent color.
I think we call it tagline. Alex calls it the kicker.
Eyebrow.
Maybe we can, the eyebrow. Yeah, maybe we can look at like the eyebrow. Alex, so like what would you recommend coloring here? Would you keep it consistent with the heading, or would you
Use the brand.
I would highlight the. I would switch it to say a blue potentially.
Yeah.
If it was the headline was in blue, I'd keep that in black. But I wanted a slightly different color to my. Or I put it grey so it floats behind. But I want something to indicate that it's a different class in some way, and to keep it consistent.
got it?
Make it pop. Make it pop.
Make it pop. Blue ribbon. So that I could change per section, but I think keeping it consistent actually works pretty well.
Yeah, I like that.
Sweet. All right, how are we going for copy? Should we wrap this one up?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, we're good.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've got the complete problem solution headlines for the walkthrough and a CTA. So we haven't got the paragraph copy, but we've got a complete narrative for the headlines, so we're good.
Awesome. I might just publish this one. We can refer to it in Webflow. We're live.
Refresh. Boom.
It looks so much better. Cool.
Nice.
Let's go from the top.
Stay on top of your small business even when life gets messy. CTA, build a schedule or learn more. Okay, I want to scroll down. Obviously, this is, you got a little image above the fold here, so it teases me to take a look. Beautiful graphic. All right. So scrolling down.
That looks
What are your
nice.
thoughts on the learn? What are your thoughts on the learn more here?
I wanted to
Would
come
you
up to
drop
this,
that
so
or keep it.
great question. So CTAs, I often have a pair. So the question comes down to how high risk is our primary CTA? If your primary CTA is as high risk as give me $10,000, you definitely want a secondary CTA that's lower risk. So it could be, your primary is high risk, your secondary is low risk. In this case, build your first schedule or build a schedule's fairly low risk. So I'll be quite comfortable having someone just have that as a CTA. I wouldn't have learn more. I would have maybe watch a video, but build a schedule works well because we're not really asking someone to risk much time or money.
No, that's clear. That's really nice.
What you can also
balanced.
do, we don't necessarily have to do this, for more risk mitigation, you can have a piece of subtext underneath that says no credit card required. That's quite handy.
Nice. Underneath the CTA?
Yep, no credit card required. But people have to remember as well, the two things that business people are worried about are money and time. And a lot of the time, business people are more worried about time. So if I've got, for example, book a demo, I often say book a 15-minute demo.
That's so good.
Business owners don't want to get suckered into an hour. If you know it's a 15-minute demo and only a 15-minute demo and you can do it over your lunch break, don't ever risk wasting a business owner's time. Make it clear you won't waste their time.
Now that's gold. Do not waste their time and help them save their money.
Yep. So this is what we call risk mitigation here.
So you go
Nice.
large and small. That's nice. Yeah, that's good spacing. That's great. I like that.
Nice. All right, let's move on. Then we have our logos, which I haven't added, but we would have some company logos here. Then we have a testimonial, which I got AI to write. Keen to get your thoughts on the best way to, I guess, outside of it needing to relate to the headline, like are there any other tips around testimonials? Although they
So just to answer this quick question, a couple of your people here have pointed out we've actually got centralized text for the customer quotes and for the copy directly underneath headlines. For explainers, you can get away with having those centralized. Having explainers centralized can work. For feature sections, I would always have those left aligned, just to make that clearer. When it comes to the customer testimonials, the biggest issues are dumping lots of them together, but also people have really long customer testimonials. You want the shortest, punchiest, hyper edited testimonials possible. You don't want to drag people through 2 paragraphs. You want to make one simple point that's really relevant to the sales pitch. I keep like a bank of customer testimonials that are chopped up, edited, and tagged as well. That customer testimonial is great. It's really short, it's emotive, it's easy to skim read. If it's long, people just skim past and they don't read them. Also,
Awesome.
Pictures are really important. Having a picture is proven to improve engagement as well. So I like that testimonial a lot.
Sweet. Well, I think, what are your thoughts on something that I sometimes consider is like, if this is going to be a product for solopreneurs, trying to have someone that's like known by that community is like
100%.
an added, cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I
Then we
think
have-
I would always lean more towards having people who are relatable as opposed to people who are impressive. Trying to impress people with credentials, I don't think is as effective as maybe that's someone like me but slightly above me. It's somebody I'd like to be. If somebody's 2 rungs above me, that's aspirational. If someone's 10 rungs above me, they're the CEO of IBM, I don't even relate to that person. They're not relevant to me.
Relatable. Yeah, that
Yep.
makes sense. All right.
This is
then we have
nice.
the problem. It's okay. I'm not loving the icons, to be honest. I'd probably want to spend some more time exploring different
Yes.
treatments, but
Compared
yeah,
to the
it
typical icons,
took me 2
it's
minutes.
pretty good. It's pretty good.
They work
Yeah,
for now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But yeah, this is the problem. We've kind of looked at that one. Then we have the solution, which is like the overarching sort of description, the claim, which is meant to reinforce the hero section here, or the claim made in the hero section?
Yeah, so I haven't written that one yet, but exactly that. So you provide the overall value proposition in the headline, and then the explainer underneath fleshes it out with slightly more, with a couple of features perhaps to back it up and make it sound more credible. So the example I often use, if you imagine in boxing, you've got a jab and a cross. You know, a jab is a very quick, fast punch that stuns somebody. A cross is a slower punch that knocks them out. Your headline is like a jab. It grabs somebody's attention, but the explainer underneath is got the knockout power. That's got more features. It's got a little bit more information that makes it sound and feel credible.
Got
That's
it.
a good analogy.
So again,
Okay,
we've
then
just
we
got the
have
headline
getting
here.
started.
Yep. Connect your calendar and build your first schedule. And you can see here, I would build out the technical features into those 3 bullets underneath. And that then means that paragraph of copy underneath, that I've not had time to write yet, we would stick with more of a narrative, flesh out and explain how we help them to connect their calendar, how we help them to build their first schedule. But the nerdy technical details, pop those down into the bullets for people who care about those.
Got it. Yeah, and I would update these as well. Just probably maybe ticks could work. Or
Yeah, I've
that
actually-
represents the feature.
I've actually got some authority there. So my friend, who's a high-level CRO consultant, they've actually tried testing ticks against custom emojis. Ticks actually convert better than custom emojis. A lot of people are doing custom emojis, and I think the answer is that ticks are just easier to make sense of. People try and be too clever with design, and most of the time keeping things simple and repetitive actually works better than being clever.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna try and find a tick.
As an anecdote here, one of my friends is a guy you probably know called Peter Levels, who runs nomadlist.com. He asked me can I give him some tips? I told him to add feature bullets to his hero section for Nomad List. He's added 5 feature bullets. His actually use emojis, telling people 5 use cases for Nomad List. He got 400% more conversions.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
I love feature ticks. Feature ticks or use case ticks, either one of the 2.
Sweet. So then we have the next feature section, which what's the rationale behind this one?
This one here is you've actually got because I haven't got enough features to work with. This is you've got your main scheduler here, so you can focus on the most valuable tasks in your business. First one's getting set up. This one is you've got your schedule in front of you, and it's telling you what to do with your day, basically. I would have feature ticks underneath that explain this is your schedule. These are the different things you can do in your day. It might talk through your task prioritization. Maybe you've got color coordinated tasks, but this is basically the main feature cluster for actually using your scheduler. We're just missing a bit of paragraph copy. And this one is the, I need to play around with this more, but basically you're going to have the AI adaptation. So as this is the main feature we had to differentiate our product against the competition is as your day changes and things happen, the product evolves and it changes your schedule to keep up.
Nice. Then we have a supporting testimonial, supporting the above claim, and then the CTA. Talk us through the CTA.
So yeah, just 2 short sentences. For proposition, try Time Hero for free. That's what we're asking them to do. Plan a better work week, what they get out of it. So it's an invitation and a promise for what they get for doing it. So it's low. It's low risk. It's free. There's no cost involved, and they get something out of that. Plan a better work week.
Love it. Awesome. I think that's it. I think that's
Beautiful.
Probably time. Thanks so much for walking us through the thinking, Alex. I personally have learned a bunch.